All right. Maggie, why don't you tell us about your greatest failure?
My greatest failure. So right now I'm committed to play collegiate softball at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But in order to do that, I had to go through the recruiting process. And in the fall of my junior year, I was basically 100% committed and set on attending this one school in particular. I had multiple campus visits, multiple invites to their softball recruiting camp, and it seemed like the coaches were completely on board on giving me an offer. Come November of 2022, I got a cold call from the head coach of this school, and they told me that they were no longer recruiting me. Given that I was 100% set on this school, I had stepped away from talking to other coaches. And when I got this call, I realized I had to start the recruiting process all over again. Come July of 2023, I committed to play softball at MIT. And I later learned that I originally started getting recruited from the MIT coach because she saw me at a camp for the university that rejected me before. Although getting rejected by this one school in particular in November of 2022 was undoubtedly my biggest failure and biggest heartbreak at the time, it taught me that whenever a door closes, another window opens.
Very good. Very good. Why is it that you admire Michelle Yeoh? Yeoh? And who is that?
Michelle Yeoh is an actor who is particularly in a lot of action movies and a lot of action stunt movies. One reason why I admire her is because she is an Asian American and has learned multiple languages for the acting roles that she's in and had to learn so many different things in order to perform the stunts that she does. She does all of her own stunts, and I admire her flexibility in being willing to adapt to any situation that she's thrown into. And being half Asian myself, I particularly admire her for her tenacity and being able to mold to the culture here in America.
Okay. Recently in a graduation, I believe it was at Duke, a student, when she crossed the stage, accepted her diploma and then proceeded to rip it up on stage. What do you think about this new movement of college graduates? And what do you think there should there be consequences from the university? Should there be social consequences? How do you feel about this?
From my own point of view, I believe ripping up a diploma that you just had received after 4 years of hard work in front of an audience of thousands of people is a classless act. But I don't think that the university should interfere and give the student consequences for her acts because that'd be taking away First Amendment and free speech rights. It's ultimately her act and her opinion, and she has the ability to do whatever she wants as long as it's not harmful for the other students and staff members that are there. Because she was just ripping up her diploma rather than physically hurting someone else, I don't think she should face consequences, but it was undoubtedly classless.
If you could travel to any foreign country, where would you go and for what purpose? Why?
I would love to see Italy because I'm a huge believer in connecting textbook to reality. I have taken Latin, which the language of Latin, for the last 4 years. And not only do we learn how to speak Latin, but about half the class is learning about the history of Italy, specifically Pompeii, and at the time of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. So I'd love to visit Italy to see the ruins of Pompeii and connect all the textbook learning I did for the last 4 years to real life.
Within the last month, Maggie, we've had university campuses, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, and in the Midwest, protesting. Again, this time, pro-Palestinian. What do you do with those students? Should they have sanctions? Should we go easy with them? How do you think the universities should respond to student protesters who are students and people who are just interested? How would you handle it?
So I'm committed to go to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So obviously I've paid close attention to how the president over at MIT has been handling this situation, and I think they've handled it very well. About a week and a half ago, they gave students an ultimatum that if they didn't leave the encampments in the middle of campus by 2:30 p.m. each day, students would face immediate consequences. I think taking this approach is essential because it splits out the students that will face consequences with the students that weren't involved at all and won't face consequences. Other colleges that are completely shutting down graduation ceremonies, I think it's ultimately unfair for students who didn't deserve to face the consequences that they were facing. And instead, we should take an approach like MIT took with giving an ultimatum and filtering out which students are following the rules and abiding to what laws are put in place and which students are ultimately going against any rules set in place.
If you were to face a transgender athlete in collegiate competition, how would you handle that?
I think with transgender athletes coming to the main stage as of late, I'm very proud of these athletes for being willing to give themselves a stage. But I think competing against transgender athletes with biological women is ultimately unfair. A student that I know that graduated from Brookfield Central in 2023 had a soccer match in which she faced a transgender woman, and she was ultimately spiked. It was a soccer match, spiked all across her legs and injured due to how the biological advantage that this athlete had. I think it's important to give transgender athletes a stage to perform on, but we need to separate them from the biological women so that they don't have an advantage.
Will you be watching the Summer Olympics in Paris this year? And if so, do you have any particular sports that you are interested in, more than one?
For me particular, I have a very busy 2024 summer, but if I were to follow one sport, it would be gymnastics. Or I'm so sorry, not gymnastics, that's the Winter Olympics, but it would be track and field. My mom is a huge advocate and loves to follow Olympics in general, and not because I'm particularly fond of Olympics, but I would love to follow the track and field athletes because it's a passion of hers and it gives me a way to connect with my mom.
All right. Tell me more about your tutoring experience.
So I started tutoring around my sophomore year, and I've always been a tutor in mathematics. I started tutoring one of my best friends who was taking pre-calc, which was a class that I had taken my freshman year. And so it just started off with me giving advice to him. And then when I got into the National Honor Society, they placed us on a bunch of different tutoring tracks for multiple students. Now I love to tutor for Algebra 2 students, pre-calc, and ACT math section because I want to give my learning and my advancements in this subject to the other students that go to my school.
Do you think standardized test scores are an even playing field for applicants into college, or should we eliminate them?
I think there is a huge advantage in offering standardized test scores because, like it's in the name, it's standardized for everyone. But I think schools should be test optional. There's hundreds of students out there that will say, I'm not built for standardized tests. That's not how I learn best. I think for an applicant, some students that do really well with standardized tests should be allowed to show their score to the college that they're looking at. But students that don't really work well in a testing setting and rather have more experience with, say, research should have the option to not send in a score and instead show off other capabilities that they have, like biomedical research or mathematics competitions.
Maggie, how do you handle the ever escalating cost of just going to college, the tuition, room and board? And do you think there's somewhere we can have remote learning coming in and balance those two things of being a resident and also doing online learning? Is that something that colleges should look at?
I think colleges should offer more and more remote learning, and that's tending to come to the stage right now. So, like I mentioned before, I'll be going to MIT next year. And one thing that MIT does that's super unique to them is that they offer free online courses for a handful of subjects. For example, if you look online and type in Intro to Chemistry MIT, you can get a full semester course for Intro to Chemistry that were recorded lectures from the past, as well as the assignments that come with it. I think offering things like these for students that are actually enrolled in the college in order to save on tuition would be of utmost importance and should be something that is offered.
Do they offer these courses for actual credit, or is it just something that people can do?
So for this, it's something that people can do, but if we were considering adding it in for credit, it should be offered for students that are enrolled at the school itself in order to get credit for it.
Okay. All right, that was time. How you feel about that one?
I think it was better than the last one. I'm getting a little tired, but it was decent. Yeah.
You're allowed to get tired.
Right?
Yeah. I just had a
Um,
game. It's all good.
The greatest failure I thought was a really good. I hadn't heard you talk about that before. I thought that was a really good example. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that one. I just thought that was really good. I hope they give you that question.
And the other thing is too, on that particular one, I knew you were going to MIT, but the other school who stopped recruiting, I don't know if you mentioned that. It would just help for a person the first time understanding that other school. All I
Yeah,
heard was
I don't think,
MIT.
I don't think it's gonna hold you back in any way to mention what that school was. I don't think that hurts you in any kind of way. In fact, I'm be willing to bet that MIT is a more prestigious, both academic school. No,
Amen to the amen.
It's comparable.
it's comparable. Okay.
It is? Okay.
Mhm. It was Harvard.
Was it?
I figured that.
Oh my goodness.
Ah,
Okay.
darn it.
Well,
Hogwarts.
well, they're
Weren't you
both in
talking, yeah,
Massachusetts.
weren't you talking to Columbia for a while too?
Yeah, I was talking to Columbia for a very long time. They were like right there with MIT, and then they just don't really have a good
Yeah. Well, you
program
dodged a
in.
bullet there. You don't want to go to Columbia.
I think I definitely
Well,
dodged a bullet with that one.
can I tell you something? Just the panache of Harvard, just mentioning that, that gives you a lot of credit. And while
Mhm.
they're comparable, I think that's good. I thought you were talking about the University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, you
Mhm.
know, but
Mm,
that has gravitas.
yeah.
And it shows that you're just not a spring chicken. We're sending a qualified, academically prepared, as well as athletic prepared person. But Harvard puts a spotlight on you that's favorable.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, and the other thing to consider too, Maggie, is that they didn't reject you on your academics.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't have the spot in the lineup that you would have filled, right? And so I think
Right.
it says a lot about you as an individual that you could have very easily stayed as a contender to go to Harvard and probably would have gotten in academically.
Mhm.
But it was important to you to pursue playing softball in college. So I think
Yeah.
that's a great story. I wouldn't be
I
ashamed
love
of
this
that in
story.
any kind of way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a lateral move. It's not like softball was so important to you that you said, I am willing to go anywhere. I'll go to a D3 school. It's the academics are super important to me, but so are the athletics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 That was
And
good.
it I guess I should probably mention it because it makes sense. That's why MIT was there, because obviously they share a camp. Like, it's in Cambridge. The camp was in Cambridge, so
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think
I guess just listening closely, it was very pregnant without knowing what the other school was. So,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
don't have to do anything because you made it clear that they were looking at your athletic prowess and they didn't
Mhm.
need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the deal with, pretty much any sports, but I think a lot of people who haven't gone through the recruiting process probably don't realize how specific of a spot they're trying to fill.
Yeah.
Like, for Ryan, they were looking for sprint swimmer,
Mhm.
sprint
Mhm.
freestyle. That's it. Like, if they don't need that, they don't need that. So that would have been a completely different case for him if Harvard didn't need that, you know?
Yeah. Like, if I was an outfielder, I'd probably be going there. Like,
Exactly. Right. So, all
yeah.
right, good. The Michelle Yeoh, I thought was fine. You had good reasons for liking her and admiring her. I didn't really had anything to add with that. You added
And
a
I love the personalization of it too.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
part Asian. That was great.
Yeah, I like that connection as well. The RIP diploma, I thought you had a solid answer on that, that it was classless, definitive judgment statement, and yet you backed up the First Amendment. Like,
Yeah.
right, let those, you may even want to add, there may be companies that see that sort of thing and choose not to hire her because of it, and that's their prerogative, right? She
Right.
chooses to make a public spectacle of herself. And what that's
Mhm.
gonna do to her job prospects, that's on her, you know, but she did
Right.
have every right to do it, even though it was classless. That was good. Traveling to Italy, I really like that answer too. You really brought that to life with the textbook to real life, what you wanted to see
Mhm.
specifically when you're there because you had studied it. I thought that was really good.
Can I ask you something on that question?
Yeah.
Ellen, was that something that you've used with Maggie in the past? I mean, I just
No,
thought that was great where she talks about textbook to whatever. That
no.
is that's like a well-written speech, and she came with it off her foot. I want to give you kudos for that because it puts me up and says, "Hey, where's the connection?" And you didn't take a lot of time. I think you did it in like 20 seconds. But
Mhm.
just that opening thing, that shows that you can think on your feet. So I
Mhm.
love the way you came up with that just simple thing, textbook to life
Textbook.
or whatever that was. It was great.
Yeah.
Yep, good stuff. The protests committed to MIT, super awesome the way you said Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was nice and slow. They soaked that in, right? I think
Yeah.
that was really nice. I didn't listen a ton after what you said to that, but I thought that was all good. Uh, then we went into the transgender athletes. Again, I think you had a really solid answer on that. You're proud of your friends who are trans, who are making their way in this world. However, they need to not be competing against biological women in sports where they could injure them. I think
And Maggie, and I love that you gave an opinion and you stood by it. I thought it
Mhm.
was great. I could see so many people saying, well, a come see, come saw. I love that you were definitive. And then you had a personal thing of a friend.
Mhm.
So that
Right.
was excellent. And I'm sure you're going to get some form of that kind of questioning. And I think you handled it
Yeah.
superbly. You
Mhm.
took an opinion and you defended it.
Yeah,
For sure.
especially as an athlete, I would expect them probably to go there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the Summer Olympics, the track, the gymnastics, and then track and field.
Yeah.
Fine.
Oopsies.
I think it'd be cool too to mention that your mom writes about the Olympics,
Right. Yeah.
right, not just that she follows it. I totally
Oh,
thought you were gonna
what?
say, totally thought you were gonna say softball, but
Yeah.
but
It's like,
it's fun that you watch with your mom, and that's something that you share together. And yeah,
yeah,
good. I would
the
definitely mention that she's a
softball.
writer, that she covers those kinds of events,
Okay. Yeah.
you know. Um, Tutoring, I was sorry, I wasn't really listening because I was looking for another question. So
No, all good.
And you gave her that question.
She did a great job on the tutoring.
sorry.
Very
Then
specific.
we got into the standardized tests. I like that you said it's standardized, it means it's for everyone. I've read so many argument papers on this recently that I'm kind of spun up on the pros and cons. Some food for thought is that standardized testing, a lot of times people say that it's unfair because underserved communities don't have the resources, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
However, a lot of those communities also don't have the opportunities to build up the resume to do the things that somebody in Brookfield might be able to do. But a
Right.
standardized test is a standardized test. And so for a lot of those kids, it is a great equalizer, and taking it out of the equation could actually hurt them more than help, because
Okay.
everybody else has all these other factors that they can add in that they may not have access to doing.
Okay.
So just something to consider.
Yeah.
And then the cost of college, yeah, offering more remote learning. It's interesting in terms of like they offer these free classes. I know Harvard does this, Yale does this, Stanford does.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah.
take these classes and you can take them for free, but you don't actually get credit for them. So
Right.
it really begs the question of the value of the education. Because if the
Mhm.
content of the education is free, what are you actually paying for?
Paying for the credit.
Piece
Right?
of paper.
The ability to rip it up on stage. It
Paid
does
60
make you
grand to
wonder
rip up a
though,
diploma.
because I mean, if it's
Mhm.
really the knowledge that you're seeking, you can get all of that for free if you have the internet.
Okay. Yeah.
But
So
so then think about the other options that go along with that. the connections that you have with classmates, being able to be in study groups, to be able to bounce ideas off of each other, to have
Well,
a
the
real life
feedback from a professor.
right? That you can actually
like MIT, all of the students do research, and it's completely like with the tuition. Like all
Okay.
that research is with tuition.
yeah,
So stuff like that.
Yeah.
You pay for the opportunities, and
Right.
exposure,
right. Yeah.
not just the education.
Yeah. And it makes me think too, there are people that are calling for like, don't hire anybody from Columbia. Right. And that's kind of like the reverse effect of what we're talking about. Like, should there be consequences for students? But then the question also comes up, what about those people who are just, they've had their head down in a lab researching, mice brains for 4 years, and they pop up for graduation and find out they're canceled because some idiot ripped their diploma up on stage.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you go with that as a culture? Should we really be canceling entire graduating classes from schools because
Of one
movement
situation.
that they may or may not have even been aware of at the time? Right? Like,
Mhm.
our culture just becoming so reactionary to everything that we're just so willing to place blame to feel like we have some kind of power. Right? So that's a dangerous overreaction, I think, that may be happening
Yeah.
as well,
I
to
think
kind of
so.
be aware of. So, all right. We're at an hour. How you feeling?
Oh, was that all of the questions?
That was it. That was the last one.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Feel good?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thanks for popping in, everybody. And
Yeah, thank you so much. I know this was a
we'll
long
Not a
one.
problem.
I'll just
Not a
touch base with
problem.
Maggie in school and figure out when we're gonna do another one, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this weekend would be good. Not too bad.
And also, great job on hand gestures.
Yes, they're improving. We've been working on those.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Today in the answer, I tried so hard to keep them down. In my
the
self-expression
video
question.
one, the YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so funny because in the beginning, honestly, your shoulders are shaking.
They were
like you
they were ready. They were ready to
you
go.
want to use your hands so bad.
I know. And then I'm like, okay.
Wait to see what you were gonna do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good
Like
stuff.
sit on your hands.
Yeah, literally. I had to keep my hands behind my back. Someone handcuffed me.
Oh gosh, we're getting there. We're getting there, Maggie.
Yep.
All right. Well, have a great night, everybody.
Bye, y'all.